Hi everyone, welcome back. I hope you're all doing really well. So you will be watching this on the 1st of December, which is officially the first day of Advent, and if you are part of the YouTube world, then I guess it's also the first day of vlogmas. So for me, on my channel, I'm not going to be filming and uploading every single day, vlogmas wise, but I am gonna hopefully be filming some more Christmassy style, vloggy style videos throughout the month of December, and hopefully including lots of lovely Christmassy content. I've got a few things planned, things I'd quite like to make, things I'd quite like to bake, things I'd quite like to do, you know, all that kind of stuff. So I thought I'd just make my videos, you know, that kind of stuff. Hats off to anyone that films, edits and uploads on a daily basis here on YouTube. I actually don't know how you do it. So today I have got a few things to update you with. I've got some new makes to share, knitting and sewing. I've also got some new fabric and a couple of little plans of things that I want to get done over Christmas as well. A few crafty things, crafty bits and pieces, and then at the end of the video I'm just going to go through the Q&A questions. Thank you so much for all of the questions that you sent in, so I will be answering those at the end of the video. So let's first of all start with a new sewing make, shall we? I have sewn my very first grain line Archer shirt and I'm so pleased with this. So this was on my plans. I think I've talked about the fact that I did want to sew this. I've never made a proper tailored shirt before. I will pop in the line drawings of the Archer here, but really it's just a traditional style shirt. It has a collar on a stand, it has a back yoke which is finished with the burrito method. The bottom of the back yoke is finished with a big box pleat, and then you've got these little patch pockets, and you've also got sleeve cuffs as well. So you can make two versions of this pattern. You can make the standard style shirt, or you can make this one which has like a gathered skirt at the back of it. So here's my finished version. I'm so pleased with this, and it was such a lovely thing to sew, or such a lovely garment to sew. I've sewn mine from a viscose Dobby fabric. It's a lovely stripy fabric. It does have a little bit of a sort of a bumpy texture to it, which I found out while I was sewing, so that did give me a little bit of a challenge along the way because it did want to crinkle up as I was sewing. But I thought this fabric would make a lovely shirt fabric, particularly for me who I don't like wearing anything too structured or anything too restrictive. I quite like to wear more drapey fabrics with quite a lot of movement. So this was quite a good compromise because it does have a bit of structure, but it also, as you can probably see, has quite a nice wobble and drape. So the cuffs were really the part of a shirt that I'd never really sewn, cuffs and sleeve plackets. So it was really good to have a go at that and see how cuffs and plackets are sewn. It's quite a fiddly process, but I did enjoy it all actually, and it's quite nice to sort of slow down and take your time and make sure you're getting all the details right. So turn it around so you can see the back. So this is the back yoke here, which is just edge stitched, and then you've got the big box pleat at the back. If you're interested to see the sewing process, I filmed a whole vlog of this over on my Patreon group, so I will link that down below if you want to pop over and check that out. Yeah, that's my most recent sewing make. And then in knitting, I finished this a few weeks ago now actually, and I've not done anything with it. I've not taken any photographs of it, I've not worn it out or anything like that, but I'm actually really pleased with this, and I think the fact that I'm so pleased with it is the reason that I'm not actually wearing it out because this is such a neutral colour. I'm a little bit scared of getting it dirty. It's knit from a ball of Rowan pure cashmere yarn. So the pure cashmere yarn is lovely, but it's very expensive. I think it is around 38 to 40 pounds a ball, and I actually bought this ball of yarn in the Black Friday sale last year, and then I kept it because I didn't get around to knitting the hats, and then it got to sort of spring summertime and I thought I'm not going to knit or wear a hat now, so I'll save it to next year. So the pattern is actually from this Mode at Rowan pure cashmere knitting pattern book, which I picked up from John Lewis for only £5, and I wasn't sure whether I'd ever get to knit anything from it or not because, as I say, the yarn is very expensive if you do use the actual yarn. There are some lovely jumpers in this book actually, including this one on the front here, but you can imagine how much it would cost to knit up something like that at £40 a skein. I always say that wrong. So this is the pattern. It's the Shea Beanie. You can either knit it flat or knit it in the round. I ended up knitting it flat because I didn't have the right needle size to knit it in the round, and it was so lovely and easy to knit. It's literally just stocking stitch from the bottom up with some decreasing for the crown, so a very lovely easy project. But funny story, I don't know if you do follow me on Instagram, you might have heard me talk about this over there. I had wound my skein into a ball, and I just could not see how this one ball was going to knit up a hat as big as this. And as I was knitting it, my ball of yarn was sort of getting smaller and smaller, and I was doing that thing of, you know, when you think it's like playing thread chicken when you're sewing. I was knitting as fast as I could because I felt as though I was going to run out of yarn, and I thought knitting faster was actually going to help me to get to the end of my yarn before it ran out. You know what I mean? I think we've probably all done that. It was quite funny, but in the end I did actually get to the end of the hat, but I did knit slightly less length than the pattern called for, just because I felt like it was getting too long, and I managed to kind of try it around my head and realised it was going to fit. And this is the amount of yarn that I was left with, so it was literally like down to the last strands. I'm so glad that I managed to get that out of the one ball of wool. So I'm going to have to get that out and wear it actually. I didn't know whether to block it, but I don't think I'm actually going to bother. I don't think it needs it. Okay, so let's talk about new fabric and a sewing plan that I have, which I would quite like to get done in December, but it's not urgent. So let me take this little pile apart. So I ordered in one of Minerva's sales, I think it was the Craft Club Day sale, this Mind the Maker, I think it's called the Thelma Thermal quilting fabric. So I've had my eye on this for so long. I think last year, or whenever they first brought it out, I really wanted to get some, but I didn't really have anything in mind that I wanted to make. And I have been a bit obsessed making jackets this year actually, and there was another jacket that I wanted to sew, so I thought, when it's in the sale, I'm just going to go for it and get it. So this is a lovely quilted fabric. It's got quite a big quilted pattern on it actually, and then it's just got this sort of thermal. It doesn't feel very thermal actually, but it is called a thermal fabric. It doesn't feel overly warm, but I guess it's got this sort of polyester batting in the middle of it, so it's just double-sided. So what I want to make with this is actually yet another Ilford jacket hack. I saw a really lovely quilted jacket on the Next website, and I'll put an image in here so that you can see it. I would really like to make something similar to that, and then when this fabric came up in the sale, I thought actually that would be perfect. They have a few different colours of this actually. They've got a lighter olive green as well, but I went for the darker bottle green. And then Mind the Maker also do, I actually forget what this is called, but it's like the outer part of the quilting fabric here. So I brought 1 metre of this fabric as well, because what I want to do with my quilted jacket is bind the inside seams. So obviously if I'm binding, it's always good to have like a matching binding fabric, isn't it? And then a lot of these barn style jackets have corduroy cord collars. So I brought 1/2 metre of this quite wide cord fabric, and what I'd quite like to do is make the collar from the cord and also make the cuffs from cord as well, so you've got that sort of pop of brown corduroy. This is going to be very country style, isn't it? These two colours together. I do really like this colour. I'm feeling as though they're a little bit dark together, so I really hope it's going to work well. But yeah, that is my plan. Yeah, and I'm going to use the Ilford jacket pattern to create that jacket. I'm just going to have to make a few modifications in terms of the button band and that kind of thing. So that's one of my plans for December, but as I say, December will go so fast. I'm not sure if I'm definitely going to get that done or not, but I would really like to, because I'm quite excited to see how this is going to turn out. Okay, so I think what I'll do now is just go through the questions that you've sent in over on Instagram, because there are quite a few actually, and I had some on YouTube as well, and some of them include things about what I'm planning to sew for Christmas and that kind of thing, so I don't want to sort of end up repeating myself. Right, so I'm going to do these in no particular order. I'm just going to literally read them from my phone. So I hope that's okay. So I won't say the people's names for obvious reasons, but the first question was, do you have to adjust patterns much? I sometimes feel I overthink the fit. So Yeah, I think it's entirely possible to overthink fit, and actually it's something that I've grown to be a little bit more relaxed about in my own sewing life. So I've mentioned before that I do obviously look at my body measurements, but the thing that I mostly take into account is the finished garment measurements, because I think that gives you the best idea of how a garment's going to fit you and the amount of ease you're going to get. And the way that I try and look at it is actually, if you were buying something from a shop that you tried it on and you thought it looked nice and everything, you probably wouldn't over-analyse the fit of it as much as you do when you're making your own clothes. So, I mean, I've done this myself and I still do to a certain extent. You make something and then you look at it on you and you think, oh, actually the shoulder's sitting like 1/2 centimetre off of my shoulder, it should be here. Whereas if you'd bought that garment from a shop, you'd probably think, oh, this is nice, it fits me really well. So for me, I don't get over hung up on fit. Obviously, I want things to fit me well. I don't want anything to be too big or too small. I want to be able to wear things comfortably, but I never really look at the fit and you try to make it too perfect. Yeah, I think don't get too hung up about it. I know there is such a big thing in the sewing world about getting things to fit perfectly, and obviously that's one of the reasons why we do sew, so that we can have well-fitting garments. But yeah, don't get too hung up about it. Next question, how many hours of sewing do you do in a week? So I actually don't do, particularly this year, I haven't done as much sewing as I have done in previous years. So there are weeks that go by where I don't actually do any sewing, which probably sounds strange, but for example, this month, the month of November, I've sewn 2 things, which have been my Ramona skirt and my grain line Archer shirt, which I've just shown. They both took around 2 days to sew. And when I say 2 days, I mean like around 4 hours of sewing per day. And that's all I've sewn this month. Actually, that's a lie. I did sew my mum a birthday present. I made her a laptop case, which took me about 2 hours, I think, on a Sunday afternoon. So yeah, it's definitely not a daily occurrence for me. And I feel as though sometimes I will get into the frame of mind where I can get the machines out and just do an hour or so a day. Other times, and I think this is where I am at the moment, I need to have a period of time where I know that I can do some big chunks of sewing. So I'd say it's more like 3 to 4 days a month rather than how many hours a day, if that makes sense. What did you do before sewing became your full-time job? So before I did this, I worked as a personal assistant to a director at a Christian charity, and I left that job when I went on maternity leave with my son. I actually ended up taking voluntary redundancy. So yeah, completely different working life to what I do now. I was very much sort of full-time office-based, 9 to 5. I loved that job. It was a really lovely job and the people were really lovely. I enjoyed my work. I've always quite liked. But I would say that the confinement of being in an office environment from 9 to 5, I've always struggled with that, I've always felt a little bit sort of trapped, I guess, and it's always been my dream to sort of work for myself, keep my own hours, and I've been so lucky to be able to do that. And it just kind of went from there. But in answer to that question, I was a PA, a personal assistant. Do you dress up or go relaxed on Christmas Day? So this is a really good question. I'm quite relaxed, really. I normally do put a dress on for Christmas Day, actually, and then normally a dress for Boxing Day, and then it kind of goes downhill from there. Our Christmases are quite quiet, really. We normally just see family at home in our house, or we'll go out to see other family the day after. And I always like to be really comfortable, because obviously you do a lot of sitting around Christmas time, don't you, and a lot of eating. So normally for me it will be like a short, very floaty dress that I can wear with tights that's always very comfortable. That's normally me for Christmas Day, and then onwards it would just be like a cosy jumper similar to this actually, and probably a pair of jeans or leggings. I don't get much opportunity to dress up and go out to parties, unfortunately. Best tips for finding fabrics. Online is daunting, but I have nothing close by. This is such a common problem, isn't it? And I find this as well. We don't have any fabric shops really very near to us, only John Lewis, which doesn't stock a huge range of fabrics. I think the best thing for online shopping is just to look at the fabric composition and the fabric weight. I'm going to use Minerva for an example here. They always have like a list of the fabric composition on whatever you click on to buy. For example, 20% polyester, 20% wool, for example, and then it will tell you whether it's light, medium or heavy weight. So I think that gives you a good idea of how heavy the fabric's going to be. I know that quite a few fabric companies now do offer swatch services, so I know Minerva do that. I think you do have to pay like £1 or something, and then they will send you a swatch, and that can always be useful to do if you're going to be spending a lot of money on a fabric, like a coating fabric or something like that. Another good thing to do if you have the opportunity to do this is go to one of the shows like the Knitting and Stitching show, because one of the best things about going to those shows is that you get to go and see and feel the fabrics. So it does give you a good idea, even if you then go away and don't buy a certain type of fabric, but it does give you an idea of the types of fabrics that are out there and the types of weight that there are as well. I think for me, I've been stung in the past by not paying much attention to weight. So for example, I've bought a jersey fabric, and then when it's been sent to me, it's been much lighter than I thought it was going to be. So weight is one that you really should pay attention to, I think. If there is a particular fabric that you're not quite sure about, I would always just give them a ring and tell them what you're going to be making and see if they think it's suitable for that project. And I think lots of fabric companies, particularly the smaller ones like Semi Sunshine, Fabric Godmother, they're always going to be really willing and helpful, I think. Someone says, love your content. Thank you very much. It's always so lovely to hear things like that, by the way, because it's so easy, I think, when you're doing YouTube and social media to lose your confidence with things. So it's always so nice to hear comments like that. Thank you. Do you make any Christmas gifts? No, not very often. No, I don't. Or sometimes I will make little things. For example, last year I made a cosmetic bag for the younger girls in our lives, so my daughter and my two nieces, and I filled them with lots of sort of cosmetic-y skincare things, all the things that little girls love. But in general, I don't make Christmas gifts. I find it so stressful. I think if I was the kind of person that was organised enough to start making Christmas gifts in July so that they were all done, I probably would do it more. Also, I find it so hard to know what to make for people. In fact, I'm not very good at making things for people in general, unless they specifically ask me for something. Maybe I should be better at that. And also, I do find that with December, I don't want it to get stressful. In the past, I have tried to make Christmas gifts like that, and up to the last minute, I've been sewing and sewing and sewing and feeling stressed. And I don't want December to be like that for me. I want it to be relaxed and family time and, you know, relaxed sewing and crafting. So that is why I don't make a lot of Christmas gifts. Are you doing any Christmas sewing, decorations, etc.? The only thing I'd really quite like to make this year, and I'm not saying this is going to be the only thing, because I think things do come up when you're in December and you get some more inspiration, but I would really like to make us a table runner, a Christmassy table runner for our dining room, because I had one that I made years ago and I don't know what's happened to it. So I'm on the hunt for some Christmassy fabric. I'd really like something quite neutral, so maybe like a linen-y sort of fabric with a Christmas print or something. So I really want to make, a table runner for our table. But I do fancy making one of these lovely garlands that I keep seeing around. There are loads of really nice crochet star garlands and things, and I'd really quite like to have a go at one of those. Not sewing related, but what Christmas family traditions do you have? So I will talk a bit more about this when we get more into vlogmas videos further into December. We have the usual kind of traditions, like my kids are older now and I'm not quite sure how this is going to work this year, but we have the elf that comes, although I don't think he's quite as called for this year as he has been in previous years, which is kind of sad. We always tend to go out to a lovely Christmas market local to us. In previous years we have done a panto, but same thing again, I think my kids are actually growing out of that these days, which is sad. And also when they were littler, we always used to go to a theme park, because my kids have always loved rides and they've always loved theme parks. So we always used to do one of the Christmassy theme park days, but again, they're growing out of it now, and they're just too more focused on younger children. And then we just have the normal things like Christmas Eve is always about sort of cooking for us and getting ready if we are hosting the next day. Yeah, nothing major. I think it's just always every year we think we must go to this particular Christmas market because it's so lovely. So we have to make sure that we book those things in advance. And then along the same lines as that, favourite seasonal traditions, new things you're trying this year, seasonal recipe favourites. So seasonal recipe favourites, I always make mince pies, which are the Mary Berry ones, and in previous years I've always made the Mary Berry Yule log, and the past couple of years I haven't actually made it. I'm gonna try and make that again this year. It's just like a Swiss roll, and then it's filled with ganache. Well, I fill it with ganache anyway because the actual recipe calls for cream and I don't like cream, so I fill it with chocolate instead. I think rather than include the recipes in this video, what I'm going to do is just include them in some future vlogmas videos. So I know that you all love a bit of baking as well, so I'm going to try and do a bit of baking in my vlogmas videos too, so I'll include that then. Favourite Christmas tree ornaments and how you decorate your tree and home, so I will show that when we have our decorations up later into vlogmas. What is your least favourite thing about sewing? For me, it's hand sewing buttons on garments. Funnily enough, I thought the exact same thing when I was making my Archer shirt. I always used to love the hand sewing parts of garments, like sewing on buttons and things like that. But more recently, I've found it so fiddly to do, and I think my eyesight is going as well. So I definitely need to wear my glasses more. You're probably going to see me wearing them more in my videos actually, because when it comes to threading needles and things, I'm just finding it so much more difficult. And I thought while I was sewing those buttons on my shirt, I really need to learn how to sew on buttons with my sewing machine, because I've never done that. I know it can do it, but every time I've come to be at the stage where I'm sewing on buttons, I'm sort of at that end stage where I just want to get it done and I can't be bothered to learn something new. So yeah, I'm with you on the hand sewing buttons. Also, I think cutting out for me is always been a bit of a thing to do, a bind to do. I don't really like it because it feels messy and it feels awkward if you're doing it on the table, and I'm always so relieved when the cutting out is done. Gathering, I find that quite awkward, and I never feel like I get my gathers as neat as they should be. So I think gathering has always been something that I've never really enjoyed. So yeah, buttons, cutting out and gathering. Festive outfit plans. I'm a bit stuck myself, so I'd love to hear your plans. I don't really have any plans this year. In previous years, I've made a dress to wear on Christmas Day, but this year I'm just not feeling like I want to make a dress. I feel more like I want to wear something cozy this year. So I'm either thinking that I'll probably end up wearing a Christmas jumper and either like leggings or comfy trousers or jeans. I don't really want to wear jeans. Actually, I was thinking that I might go back to a sweater dress and actually make myself a sweater dress for Christmas that I can wear in maybe a nice festive colour like a red or something. So I might just end up making myself another Nina Lee South Bank sweater dress, because that's nice and quick to sew up and also lovely and comfy to wear. It'd be a good one for Christmas Day, nice and warm and cosy. Or the Heather dress by Sew Over It, because I recently got that out and wore it again and realised how comfy it was to wear with leggings. So a nice red version of that might work nicely for Christmas Day. Which idea comes first in your plans, the pattern, garment or fabric? So in the past, it definitely would have been the fabric. I would have just bought a pretty fabric because I liked it and then decided later on what I would make from that fabric. I think again, going back to the trying to be more intentional, this year it's definitely been the pattern or the garment and then the fabric. Do you know, if you've been following me this year, I've had a very specific sort of idea in my head of the things I want to make: coats, jackets, jeans and that kind of thing. So it's very much been more about deciding what I want to sew and then finding the right pattern and then the right fabric. But yeah, in the past I've always been very much sort of swayed by pretty fabrics and then decided what to make afterwards. I'd love to know about your professional background, thank you. So I have already mentioned what I used to do for work. In terms of sewing professional background, I don't have one. completely self-taught, and all of my sewing has been practice and learning on the go. I've done one sewing course in my whole life, which I did while I was at work actually, and it was just an evening class where we learned how to make a pair of pyjamas. So that is literally the only sewing course I've ever done, I think. I didn't even really do it at school very much. I think what I would really quite like to do actually, if I get time to do this or feel like it might work in my life, is actually do a pattern drafting course, so that I actually learn how to like do a block or produce a PDF pattern or something like that. I think that would be really interesting and probably a good next step in my sewing life. I didn't actually realise I had so many questions here. I wanted to start selling my sewing. How did you do it and get on, and what did you sell? So yeah, I had an Etsy shop, and I also had my own website where I used to sell personalised gifts and homeware. It was called Poppy and Primrose. I used to do it very much part-time while I was being a stay-at-home mum, because I've always just wanted to work around my children. Started selling through friends on Facebook, so my close-knit of friends at the time was like an NCT group, so all young mums very much in the same position with similar age children, so the things that I made. And then I eventually decided to set up my own Etsy shop and then my own website. So it was literally a case of setting up an Etsy storefront, listing your items, and then getting orders from there. And then with my own website, same thing, just listing the items in the same way. I think what you always need to bear in mind with any kind of online store is that it's not a case of just putting your products on there and hoping that they sell. There's so much more that goes on in the background in terms of building a brand and building social media and getting a social media following, promoting your shop and getting your products out there. A social media person, you have to be a photographer, you have to be an expert in SEO, and I found all of that really interesting, so I actually enjoyed all of that. So I think just bear that in mind. I did try selling at craft fairs and like in-person markets as well, but I never really felt like that went very well for me. I never really sold a lot at those kind of events. It was always online selling that was better for me. I do have a video, I think it's called 5 Ways to Make Money from Your Sewing, and I do talk a little bit more about Etsy shops in there, so if you haven't seen that, I'll list it down below. But if there's anything else that I can help with that, then please send me a message on Instagram and I will help as much as I can. So this is a very specific question. Sapphire pants, can you make this in a knit? Straight wide leg patterns for knits, please. That's an interesting one. I don't really see why you can't, I don't see why you couldn't make the sapphire pants in a knit fabric as long as it wasn't too stretchy. So I think you could definitely make them from like a ponte fabric or something with a bit of weight to it. I'd say give it a go. I don't really see why not. Another really good wide leg pair of knit pants is the Olo set by Named Clothing. I've made this as a loungewear pattern, and it's a very similar pattern actually to the sapphire trousers. So that's really why I don't see why you can't make the sapphires from a knit fabric. But the Olo trousers, it is a loungewear set, so it's a top and trousers, and they're really comfy to wear. I've made that set before, and actually it's on my radar to make again because wide leg knit trousers are very in fashion, aren't they, at the moment? So yeah, I would say just go for it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. That's my approach to sewing anyway. Sleeves, how to swap sleeves from another pattern and how to measure. So again, I don't really have any specific advice for this other than just give it a go. When I've done this in the past, I think I've just kind of winged it. So I think when you're swapping sleeves, look at both pattern pieces together. Just make sure there are no huge differences. There's not a sort of a massive difference in terms of the length of the sleeve because it's still got to fit into your armhole. I think in sewing, for me, I'm just all about experimenting really. So I would just say give it a go and see what happens. I mean, you don't have to do it from your main fabric straight away. You could always try it from an old sheet or an old piece of fabric and see what happens before you cut into your good fabric. When I swapped my Sagebrush top sleeves for the Norma blouse sleeve, I kind of knew that both of those sleeve styles were similar. They were both quite full at the top, and you know, quite puffy sleeves, so they were similar already, but just experiment to see how it goes. That's not very good advice, but I hope it helps. What do you do when you're in a sewing slump, and how do you get the spark back? I think whenever this has happened to me, I make something really easy, something that I know that I can make in an hour or two. Normally for me, as soon as I start sewing, as soon as I actually make the leap to get the sewing machines out, I'm sort of in that sewing space again, and it makes me feel like sewing again. And often when I've made that one thing, it just makes me want to start sewing all the things again. So I'd say make something that you're very familiar with, something that's nice and easy, something you know that fits well and that you can make quickly and easily, and do that, and hopefully that will be enough to reignite your spark. So not so many questions from YouTube, but there were a few. One is, have you ever made a bra, lingerie or swimwear? What is your favourite lingerie? Oh my word. What is your favourite lingerie? What is that word? Lingerie brand, and why? So I've never made a bra, I've never made any form of underwear at all. I have made swimwear in the past and it's not gone particularly well. The only piece of swimwear that I've ever made, the bottoms fit fine, the top didn't fit me very well, so I knew that I needed to go back and sort of tweak the fit and everything, and that was enough to put me off of it for a while. And I've never gone back to that so far. I always said that there were three things I would never want to sew. One was lingerie, one was swimwear, and one was jeans. So I've done the jeans and I've done the swimwear. I haven't done the lingerie yet. But stay tuned, because in the new year I might have something coming up that's lingerie. That word doesn't sound right. Lingerie related, where I might possibly be my first piece of underwear. I'm going to say underwear rather than lingerie because it doesn't sound right. I don't really have a favourite lingerie brand, but does Marks and Spencer's count? It's not very fancy, is it? Do you have a preferred pattern company and ready-made brand that you steer yourself towards or away if you're trying to save money? Do you get time to watch other content creators, or are you too busy creating? So in terms of preferred pattern company, there are two that I love, which is Megan Nielsen, because the patterns in the Megan Nielsen collection generally tend to fit me straight out of the packet, which is always a massive bonus, apart from the Cottesloe swimsuit, which obviously didn't quite go according to plan. And I love Megan Nielsen patterns because you always get a really good choice of different designs, and also she gives you really good tips for hacking the pattern as well. So within the pattern envelope or whatever you download, she will often give you different ways that you can adapt the pattern to make it work for you better, different styles and things like that, and I think that's a really good thing to do. Obviously tilling the buttons I love as well. There are definitely a few tilly patterns that don't appeal to me, but there are a few that really do, as you'll probably know, and I've made time and again, and I just think her instructions are just second to none, really, aren't they? They really do just hold your hand the whole way through, so I do love a good tilly pattern as well. In terms of ready-made clothing, one of my favourite ready-to-wear brands is Reiss. So they do really lovely quality clothing, a really lovely cashmere knitwear and that kind of thing, lovely coats. And I also love Suzanne as well, which you'll probably know. Their clothing is so lovely. I love the prints they use, I love the colours. Where do you get your AO patterns printed, if you do, and what tracing paper do you use? What markers do you find work best? I don't like cutting notches, I prefer to mark on the fabric. So I always get my AO patterns printed by the fold line, actually. So if ever I'm buying a PDF pattern, rather than stick it together myself these days, I would much rather, if I'm organised enough, have it printed out at the time of buying. And I feel like that works really well, because when you buy the PDF, then you've still got the PDF in your collection, which you can then print out at home if you need to, but then you can also have your size printed out by the fold line. So for me, yeah, it's the fold line at the moment. But for marking notches and things like that, I think the best thing to use is actually Dressmaker's carbon paper. And I think that's what I use. If ever I can't snip a notch, or if I need to mark a dart or something like that I can't just snip, I would always use carbon paper and a tracing wheel. So these are my tracing papers. This is the roll of the A3 size one. And you probably can't tell the weight of that on the camera, but it's nice and thin. So it's not too thick, but it's, you know, weighty enough that it does keep its shape. And then this is my smaller one, and you can see how thick that is. So that really does last for ages. So yeah, I will just list those in the description. So last question, I was wondering if you sew every day and how long you would spend sewing or cutting out. I'm struggling for time even though I'm retired. So as I've mentioned, I definitely don't sew or do anything sewing related every single day. It's more on an all or nothing basis for me at the moment, I think. So I tend to, whenever I have a project on the go, I will always, if I can, trace and cut out on a separate day from actually sewing. I've always found that in the past, if I've ever tried to do both in one day, it's just too much. Yeah, but what works for me is just allocating a day or a couple of days where I can just get on. I use the dining table for all of my cutting out and all of my sewing, so I have to do it at a time where I know no one else is going to need the table or anything like that. And as I say, I'm just trying to be a bit more considered about what I am making, so I'm just a little bit more thoughtful about what I'm making each month, and then I try to look at what I've got on that month and actually allocate a good couple of days to do those things, rather than getting myself in a muddle and starting something and then feeling rushed because I've then got to pack away and not know when I'm going to be able to sew again, if that makes sense. If I had a sewing room and I had everything set out all the time and I could just keep my sewing out and my patterns out and everything, I think I'd be much more inclined to do a little bit of sewing every single day. I think I sew surprisingly less than what people think I probably do, actually, because it probably feels as though I'm always sewing and always making and always sharing things with you, but actually it's probably a lot less than you think. Thank you so much if you have made it to the end of this video. I didn't actually realise how many questions I had until I came to look at my phone. So if you did send a question in, thank you so much. I'm always really grateful, and it was really nice to sort of just sit down and have a chat today because, as I said, I didn't have a specific sort of video plan in mind. But I really hope you will join me for more vlogmasy style content in the lead up to Christmas. So thanks so much for joining me today, everyone. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, so you don't miss out on the vlogmas videos. Please do give the video a like if you've enjoyed it, and take care, and I'll look forward to seeing you soon. Bye.